This is a 2018 Aston Martin DB11, and in this video I'm going to tell you exactly why, rather than buying a Porsche Taycan for the same money or less, you should buy one of these. So then, how do I have my hands on this car? Well, this car isn't actually mine, this is my dad's car, and after a long career, the past 30 years of working on his company, it actually came time for him to retire. Throughout his life, he has always said that the car he has always wanted, his dream car, has been an Aston Martin. However, when it came to actually retiring and it came to buying himself a private car, coming from a Tesla Model 3 Performance, he thought naturally the next step for him would be to buy a Porsche Taycan. After a few conversations with him, I actually convinced him not to buy a Porsche Taycan for various reasons, and I convinced him to buy this Aston Martin to treat himself, and also for a few other reasons which are more financial. So to explain exactly why I convinced him to do that, let's go ahead and go for a quick drive. Now obviously the Porsche Taycan and this car are not comparable at all. The Porsche Taycan is an electric car, a fully electric car. It's got 5 doors, it's got 4 seats. I mean, this also has 4 seats, but I wouldn't really count them as seats. But the two cars really aren't that comparable. Throughout his lifetime, he had always said, as long as I can remember, that his dream car was an Aston Martin. I looked at this as if it was the perfect time to take that step. If there was ever going to be a time for him to buy his dream car, it was going to be now. And I think because of how hard he has worked over the last few decades, he really does deserve to treat himself. And I didn't want him to make a bad financial decision either, because when he came to me and he said that he was looking at buying a Porsche Taycan, my alarm bells immediately started ringing. Now, if you buy a brand new Porsche Taycan, I think they can reach up to like 150 grand. Let's say you buy one for 120 grand. After the first couple of years, I was looking at Porsches which were only 2 or 3 years old, which had lost close to half of the amount that they were purchased. So 120 grand, I was seeing Porsches with only a few thousand miles on the clock going for 60, 70 grand. So after we decided to go and test drive the Porsche, I said, you know, if you're gonna spend that much money on a car, why don't we look at something which is probably gonna retain its value better and is potentially even a cooler car as well. So we decided to take a trip to Aston Martin Newcastle. I was also with my brother as well. We got to the dealership, and the cars that we were looking at was the Aston Martin DB11. For the amount of money that you can get them now is an absolute steal. I remember just before we bought this car, I was watching a video by Mr. JWW, and he was in Aston Martin Edinburgh, and he saw one of these. I think it was a first edition car, and it was up for just under 70 grand. I think it was 69,000. And even he said the amount of car that you're getting for that money is absolutely incredible.
So that is now sub 70k for this car. So 69,950.
That's a lot of cars. This is a V12 Aston.
V12, 600 horsepower.
Just shy of 70k.
Yeah, 20,000 miles.
Crikey, that's a shift, isn't it?
Yeah.
We asked the guys there if they had any Aston Martin DB11s. This was the car that was there, and it was the car that we took for a test drive. So this test drive, in comparison to the Porsche Taycan, my dad test drove this car, and he immediately said, as soon as he got out of the car, he was like, yes, I'm sold. And that actually turned out to be a lot smarter of a decision for him. Number one, because he gets his dream car. He's always wanted an Aston Martin. Number two, financially, this car, let's say we have it for the next 4 years, it'll be around 10 years old. If we look at the depreciation, I reckon this car then is probably going to cost 50 to 60 grand. I reckon, I mean, I'm no expert, but I think that's the kind of depreciation that you're looking at with these cars. Rather than with a Porsche Taycan, you're going to be losing that type of money within the first year or two. Now, obviously, these two cars, the Porsche Taycan and the DB11, are not comparable at all. I think Aston Martin have called the new DB12 a Super Grand Tourer now, a Super GT car. And obviously, this is the predecessor to that car. But in comparison to the Porsche, the amount of fun that you have with this car, obviously, it'll cost a little bit more to run. It is quite quick. I mean, I've driven a few fast cars in my time. Recently had a BMW M4 competition. Obviously the Tesla Model 3, the Porsche Taycan, the electric cars are always going to be faster immediately because of that immediate torque and response from the throttle. Even though, you know, technically the Porsche Taycan might go faster than this round of track, it just does not put a smile on your face the same way that this car does. First of all, it's an Aston Martin. You know, every guy, when you mention the name Aston Martin, the association is immediately James Bond. As soon as you step in this car, realistically, you do feel like James Bond. James Bond never actually drove the DB11, he only drove the DBS of recent times, and I think 008 drove the Aston Martin DB11 Superleggera in, I think it was No Time to Die. Was it No Time to Die or Spectre? And the DB11 Superleggera is just the track version of this. But as soon as you get in this car, it just makes you feel, like the dog's bollocks, I can't lie. The way that it drives, that 4-litre turbocharged AMG engine is an absolute gem, and I think it actually really suits this car very well. Obviously, you can also get the V12 variant, which is, I think it's a 5.2 litre. Sound really good, but people actually say that in this particular car, in the DB11, the V8 is actually the better option to get because it's a little bit lighter. You know, the AMG engines are really responsive as well. It does sound good. I would probably say the V12 still sounds better, but I think this is probably even a more reliable car as well. But the way it makes you feel when you drive it, it's pushing around 510 brake horsepower. The AMG engine is actually being tuned by Aston Martin themselves, and they're actually squeezing a bit more power out of them. They actually make it sound more Aston Martin-y as well. You know, Aston Martins are renowned for having kind of like a signature sound. AMG cars, they do sound good, but I think the way that they've tuned this car, it does sound just a little bit better. And when you're crawling at slow speeds, you know, I'm going around 50 miles an hour now, and they've actually tuned it to burble as you're kind of going at these slow speeds, and when it burbles, it sounds incredible. It's not the fastest car in the world, but it's still fast. You know, 510 brake horsepower is nothing to squirm at. However, it is sending it to the rear wheels, and that is probably its only downfall, is when you do put your foot down. I mean, especially in this weather, right now it's January, it's about 5 degrees outside. When I put my foot down, 8 times out of 10, it just spins and it can't really get much traction. But that's not really why you buy this car. My dad is in his 60s now. He's not like me, he's not a young guy who wants to thrash his cars around. For him, it's more for cruising around, taking my mum out, going on a nice trip to see my brother and his granddaughter, and taking the car and enjoying the drive. You know, usually when we go out, he doesn't like to drive, he'll always give me the keys. However, if it's this car, he prefers to drive because he just loves the way that it drives. It's funny because it just seems to waft along. For being close to a supercar, it's actually such a comfortable ride. I think this is actually a perfect daily car. As fast as it is kind of racy it is, you know, it's got a really nice suspension setup. It's firm, it stays really planted, really level when you're turning corners, but at the same time, it's really good at wafting along. It just kind of eats up the road, if you know what I mean. You know, when I go over a bump, compared to my F-Type has really, really firm suspension. I can feel everything in the road. However, with this, I can feel stuff in the road, but it's not uncomfortable, if you know what I mean. It's a real joy to drive. It makes you feel special when you're in the car. It really does. The way that everything's built really feels quality. However, what I will say in the DB11, this is the model just before Aston Martin decided to upgrade the interiors of the cars. Compared to the new cars, the interior is letting down a little bit. You know, you've got the infotainment from Mercedes. The kind of design, it's nice. It's not really reaching the modern standards that some other car companies are reaching, and also Aston Martin are doing themselves. The new Aston Martin interiors are absolutely spot on. However, if you want, for example, the new DB12, or you want the new Vantage, or you want the new Vanquish, you're going to have to be spending at least, I reckon, 170 to 190,000 pounds. For 130 grand less, you can get one of these. You know, this car in particular, I think was around the 80 grand mark, but I think there's even cars going for as low as 60 grand at the minute. Even with that amount of mileage on the clock, that is an absolute bargain. If this was my car, I would be driving it around Europe. I'd be doing, you know, 3,000 mile trips just to enjoy it, because I think I could sit in this seat for hours on end and not get uncomfortable. These seats, I think they're actually the comfort seats. They look absolutely stunning, but they're so comfortable to sit in. You do feel like a gentleman when you drive this car. You feel like a gentleman with taste. You know, alternatively, if you're spending 200 grand on a car, you could get a Ferrari, you could get a Lamborghini. But after driving this, it just kind of seems that those two brands seem a little bit childish, if you know what I mean. They're very young manny cars, whereas I think if you're driving one of these, yes, it's still very flashy, but it just has something about it which kind of oozes class. I dream of the day that I can own one of these cars, drive it to the south of France and pick up my French girlfriend who lives there, drive to Spain, drive to Italy, just go on a road trip around Europe in one of these cars, because I think they're just absolutely perfect. I mean, realistically, that is what they're built for. So if you're in the market and your budget is around the, 60 to 70 to 80 grand mark, I really don't think you can go wrong with one of these. I think they're just so much car for the money. As Mr. JWW said, the amount of car that you're getting for the price tag, it is ridiculous. If you're not someone who's just all about how fast cars can go, if you're someone who enjoys the experience of a car and you like something that is comfortable, a cruiser, but also when you need it, it's a bit of a brute, I think look no further, get yourself an Aston Martin DB11.